Some stories don't start with a bang, they start with a whisper, a smirk, a single phrase so sharp it leaves a scar. This isn't my story, but it's one I carry with me because I watched it unfold up close. And believe me, it changed the way I look at people who think money makes them untouchable. And this story, it starts at a dinner table dripping with chandeliers, silverware, and poison disguised as politeness. But to really understand what happened at that table, you need to know what came before it. You need to know about him, about her, and about the promise that should have been enough to hold them together but wasn't. So let's rewind. He told me once, I never believed in love at first sight until I saw her. It wasn't at some gala. It wasn't at some high society cocktail party. No, it was in the corner of a dusty bookstore downtown. He was flipping through old engineering manuals. She was standing in front of the French poetry section, pretending to understand Baudelaire. He made a joke something about how no one actually finishes Les Fleurs du Mal, and she laughed. Not the fake kind of laugh you give out of politeness, but the kind that tumbles out of you before you even realize it. That laugh hooked him. He told me it was like finding a crack of sunlight in a windowless room. Her name was Camilla Moretti. Camilla wasn't like the others in her circle. She didn't want yachts or champagne towers. She wanted canvases, brushes, paint-stained clothes. She wanted to create. And he wanted her to be free. They would sit on the floor of her studio, surrounded by half-finished paintings and empty coffee cups. She'd talk about colors the way other people talk about politics or money. Passionate, wild, alive. He'd watch her move her hands while she explained brush strokes, and he'd think, this is what I want to protect. This is what I'll fight for. So he promised her, you create, Camilla. I'll take care of the rest. And he did. For years, he became her silent patron. He paid the rent for her studio, bought her oils and canvases, sent her to workshops abroad, covered her apartment so she could breathe away from her suffocating family. To her, he was just a consultant, a modest guy with big dreams. She thought they were equals two fighters, scrapping their way up. But the truth, he was more than that. Much more. At 22, he had built something extraordinary, an algorithm that predicted financial collapses before they happened. He sold it quietly, invested the profits, and created an entire firm out of it. His company specialized in saving businesses everyone else thought were dead. But here's the thing. He hated the spotlight. No yachts, no bragging, no headlines. He lived modestly because to him, wealth wasn't about flexing, it was about control. And when Camilla called him her dreamer, he let her believe it, because in a way he was. Just not the kind she thought. Still, he told me there were signs, small things he ignored. Like the way Camilla's phone would light up with messages from her family, and her smile would falter for just a second before she put it down. Or the way she avoided introducing him to them for years, always with an excuse. Not yet. They're complicated. They wouldn't understand. He brushed it off. He thought, she loves me. That's enough. But love, as he would learn, isn't always stronger than silence. And here's where I pause, because honestly, don't we all do this? Don't we all ignore the cracks when we're in love? We see the warning signs. We feel the hesitation, but we tell ourselves stories to smooth over the jagged edges. He did the same. He thought their love was unshakable. But love without loyalty, that's a house without a foundation. And soon it was going to collapse. He told me that night started weeks earlier with a single request. Camilla had been pacing in her studio, nervously chewing on her lip, brushes forgotten in the corner. Please, she said. Just one dinner. They've been asking about you. Dad's in a better mood lately. Mom's calmer now. It won't be that bad. I promise. And he hesitated. He had managed to avoid her family for 4 years, slipping around excuses, timing, business trips. But this time, she was insistent. For me, please. So he agreed. Against his instincts, against that quiet voice inside whispering, don't do it. He agreed. The night of the dinner, he drove himself to the Moretti estate. No chauffeur, no limo, just his reliable sedan. Polished, but unremarkable. He wore his best suit tailored but modest. He told me, I wasn't trying to impress them, I just wanted to show respect. When he pulled up to the gates, two guards checked his name as if he were trying to sneak into a fortress. The driveway stretched longer than some city streets, lined with fountains and imported trees. By the time he reached the front door, it already felt less like a house and more like a palace. Camilla met him at the entrance. She looked stunning, but there was a nervous edge in her smile. She smoothed down his tie, whispering, Just please be patient tonight. That should have been his first warning. Dinner wasn't dinner, it was theater. The dining room stretched wide, chandeliers glittering above, servants moving like silent ghosts. Around the table sat the city's elite bankers, lawyers, old money friends of the Morettis. At the head of the table, Elena Moretti herself, poised like a queen, a glass of red wine in her manicured hand. From the moment he sat down, it began. And you're in consulting, correct? One man asked, his tone dripping with polite skepticism. Yes, he replied calmly. And it pays enough? Elena asked, swirling her glass as if she were stirring poison into the air. Comfortably, he said, not flinching. The questions weren't questions. They were cuts, thin, deliberate incisions meant to expose weakness. Camilla didn't speak. She stared at her plate. Occasionally, she smiled at a joke, but not his. Never his. He told me that was the moment the air shifted. I wasn't just a guest. I was the entertainment. The poor boy brought into the Golden Hall just to be measured and mocked. And then it happened. After enduring an hour of veiled insults, of laughter that wasn't laughter, Elena raised her glass. She looked directly at him, lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. You'll never belong here, she said lightly, as if stating a fact about the weather. The table chuckled soft, cruel, complicit. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Camilla, sitting right beside him. She didn't flinch. She didn't defend him. She didn't even look at him. She just sat there, silent, as if the words didn't cut her too. He told me, that was when I realized she wasn't fighting her cage, she was guarding it. And she'd locked me outside. And here's the thing sometimes, it's not the insult that breaks you, it's the silence of the person you thought would protect you. That silence can feel louder than any laughter. It can feel like betrayal in its purest form. He stayed calm. He didn't raise his voice, didn't storm out. He just sat there, letting the poison seep in. Because in that moment, something inside him shifted. Not defeat, not shame, but clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes when you finally see someone for who they are and you decide exactly what you're going to do about it. This is where the humiliation hardens into strategy, the revenge unfolds, and the reflection ties everything together. He left that mansion in silence. No angry words, no dramatic exit. Just a polite goodbye, a half smile, and a steady walk back to his car while the sound of laughter still echoed behind him. Camilla didn't come after him. She didn't even send a message that night. He drove back alone, headlights carving a lonely path through the night. He told me the engine sounded like a broken heartbeat. Every mile felt heavier. But by the time I got home, the heaviness was gone. It had hardened into something else. When he stepped into his apartment, he didn't turn on the lights. He sat in the dark, breathing in the silence. Then he opened his laptop. On the wall, he projected the numbers, the contracts, the balance sheets of Moretti Holdings. Every line of data he already knew by heart. He stared at them and he said, This isn't a choice. This is gravity. It can only end one way. For 3 days, he disappeared into work. Camilla's calls, ignored. Her messages, left unread. She begged, Please, my mother was cruel. I should have defended you. Don't let this ruin us. I love you. But he wasn't listening. He was sharpening his blade, conference calls with Zurich, updates with London, quiet whispers with his partners, plans drafted, revised, finalized. By Friday, the trap was set. He arrived at the Moretti corporate tower in a custom-tailored navy suit. Not flashy commanding, a suit that said, I don't need to beg, I decide. He walked straight to the top floor, past the secretary who stammered, "Sir, do you have an appointment?" "Yes," he replied. "With Elena Moretti. She doesn't know it yet, but she does." The boardroom was cavernous. At the head sat Elena, flanked by executives, her glass of wine never far. She froze when she saw him. "You again?" she snapped. "Security." Two guards stepped forward, but before they could act, one of his partners, the public face of their firm, rose to his feet. "Sit down, Elena," he said evenly. "Mr. Alvarez is here at my invitation." Confusion flickered across her face. Then disbelief. "Alvarez? This is Camilla's little consultant boyfriend." The partner smiled thinly. "No. This is our senior founding partner, the architect of the strategy that saved your company, the man who owns your future." The words hit like a blade. Her knuckles whitened on her glass. He walked forward, slowly, deliberately, until he stood at the head of the table. Her seat. "Sit down, Elena," he said quietly. And she did. He looked around the room, then back at her. "3 nights ago, at your home, you taught me a lesson about belonging, about cleansing what doesn't fit. You were right. This company has been contaminated by your arrogance, your nepotism, your blindness. So tonight I'm cleansing it. Effective immediately, Quantum Leap is invoking control. You're out." Chaos erupted. Elena shouting, executives murmuring in panic. But he raised a hand, and silence fell. "You have 2 options," he continued. "Option 1, fight us in court. You'll lose everything down to your name. Option 2, sell your remaining shares for a fraction, retire quietly, and disappear. Either way, your reign ends tonight." Her voice cracked. "And my daughter?" He paused. For a moment, a flicker of something, maybe pity, maybe just memory, crossed his face. "Your daughter," he said coldly, "will learn to paint with her own brushes. The patronage is over." And with that, it was done. News of Elena's downfall spread quietly, like smoke. No scandal splashed across tabloids, just a whisper in business circles. The Morettis were gone. Weeks later, Camilla sent him a long voice message. She was crying, begging, promising she still loved him. She blamed fear. She blamed pressure. He listened, then he deleted it, and her number with it. Today, he runs the company under a new name. Profitable, ethical. Everything Elena's empire wasn't. And sometimes he remembers that night, the chandeliers, the laughter, the silk handkerchief wiping away his presence like he was dirt. And he smiles. Because Elena was right about one thing. Belonging does matter, but not the way she thought. Belonging isn't about last names, bloodlines, or old money. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone define it for you. They tried to shrink him, to humiliate him, to erase him. But in doing so, they gave him clarity. They gave him freedom. And that, as Elena Moretti discovered, is the one fortune you can't buy, steal, or inherit. It can only be earned.